So I sat out of recording this podcast for as long as I could because there was a report earlier today that Jim Harbaugh was, quote unquote, within striking distance of a deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. And I thought eventually that maybe that bad boy would come down, and that would be the episode, was that we would talk about Jim Harbaugh leaving the University of Michigan to become the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Old habits die hard, sorry. Of the Los Angeles Chargers. And you know what? That still might happen today, but at this point, might as well put the pot out. I can't help but wonder how many times we have to do this song and dance. How many times? And Jim Harbaugh is not the only guy who's guilty of it. But at what point do you just say, you know what, enough is enough? If you are not happy here, if you are never going to be happy here, if at some point you decide, I guess, not even if at some point, it certainly appears as if every offseason for the past 4 years, you have decided that you would rather be somewhere else. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and let you do that. And again, Jim Harbaugh is not the only one who's guilty of this. It seemed like the Brian Kelly special there for about a decade every year at the end of the Notre Dame season. Like, Brian Kelly might be in play for the Philadelphia Eagles job. And then 2 hours later, it's like, Brian Kelly has agreed to a 5-year extension with Notre Dame. No, at some point, you just say, enough is enough. And I realized that Jim Harbaugh has 100% of the leverage in this situation. He has 1,000,000% of the leverage in this situation. If he decides that he doesn't want to take a job in the NFL, he can bend Michigan over a barrel and demand to be the highest paid college football coach in America, to get $12 million a year, $15 million a year if he wants to. Because who is going to say no to the national championship winning coach, especially when the university athletic department, university president, fan base has completely sold out in defending Jim Harbaugh in the face of somewhat serious and somewhat verified allegations of, we can call it rule bending. I would call it rule breaking, but for sake of the argument, rule bending. It's there. And yet, the school has defended him completely. Actually, you know what? You could argue that they haven't. That they agreed to the 3-game suspension. But even after the fact, when Jim Harbaugh said, we've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong. You have nothing on me. You can't allege that I've done something wrong when I haven't. You can argue that you haven't done that, but the evidence somewhat seems contrary to that statement. But in the midst of allegations of sign stealing, in the midst of allegations of recruiting violations, Michigan put together and presented Jim Harbaugh with a contract extension that he has yet to sign. And it appears as if there are differing opinions on why he hasn't signed. One leak has been that he wants complete immunity for any potential NCAA violations. He wants to basically not be able to be fired for cause for NCAA violations, which would be a pretty much unprecedented college football contract, because that's going to exist in everybody's contract. If you break the rules in such a fashion that puts us at this horrible disadvantage competitively, guess who's going to be held responsible for it? It's you. But he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to deal with that. He doesn't want the repercussions, the consequences of his actions. And if there was to be, a determinate, obviously there's a power struggle there between he and Ward Manuel, where, to somewhat Ward Manuel's credit, he apparently has some sort of a conscience, and it's like, hey, we're guilty of some really bad stuff here, and we need to separate ourselves from that, or at minimum, not dig ourselves a further hole. But when the team that wears the laundry you like is winning, you're willing to look past a whole lot of stuff. So it certainly appears as if there's a power struggle there between Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel, where Jim Harbaugh's demands are, if the future of my fate needs to be decided, it should not be unilaterally decided by that guy. And on the flip side, Michigan wants assurances that Jim Harbaugh's not going to leave for the NFL. And you know what? They're in the right there when basically every year for the last 4 or 5 years, it has been a song and dance of whether you are coming back here or not. And eventually, that just becomes not a fun exercise to go through every offseason, because it's January 23rd. If you are going to leave, you're going to put us in a hell of a spot where we almost have to hire an internal candidate. And that might not be the best person for the job, which is going to set the program back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows? But every year you do this song and dance where basically you're just waiting for the first piece of NFL ass to come along for you to fall for. And it certainly appears as if you'd rather be there than Michigan. Now, when you are still producing the results that you are in college football at Michigan, when it appears as if you would be anywhere else, is frankly impressive. I don't know about you, but if I was in a job I didn't want to be in every day, I'm not showing up and putting in championship level commitment. But Jim Harbaugh has done that. So kudos to him for motivating himself through that. But it's abundantly clear that he would rather be anywhere else other than Michigan. I guess that's not fair. He would rather be in the NFL than Michigan. That to him, the worst NFL job would be better than being the head coach in Michigan. Because if somebody would have said yes to him over the course of the last half decade, he wouldn't be the head coach in Michigan anymore. It's not as if he's turning them down. It's as if they're turning him down. And you have to wonder why that is. And the reputation goes that he's difficult to work with. He's grating. After a while, it just gets to become too much. And you saw that with Michigan, where in 2020, and I had kicked around the idea of doing a What If Wednesday, with What If Wednesday. What if Ohio State and Michigan play in 2020 and isn't canceled because of COVID? I'll tell you what happens. Michigan gets their tails kicked. Jim Harbaugh is either fired or resigns, and it alters the course of college football history for the next half decade. But it didn't happen, so here we are. But Jim Harbaugh wants to be in the NFL. And I don't know and obviously Michigan can't at this point just say, hey, you know what? Actually, never mind. If you want to go be the Chargers head coach, go. If you want to go be the head coach of whatever franchise you want, I don't care. Leave. I'm not doing this anymore. They can't say that. And I'm certain that if you got a hold of some truth serum and injected it into Michigan's athletic director, president, whatever the case may be, somebody will tell you, I'm so damn tired of doing this. I'm so sick and tired of having the questions, of wondering whether or not the face of our university wants to be here, whether he's going to be the guy that we need him to be, want him to be, and is going to show us the commitment. And generally, like the analogy that gets used is like, well, if your wife was interviewing candidates to replace you after the second time, you're like, and I don't even think you need to go to like the whole marriage thing. If you were a manager at your job and somebody that was under you told you that for the 4th straight year they're looking for a new job, at some point you just go, why are you still here? Leave. If all you're going to do is show up, do your job, but then when you leave this office, try to find anywhere else to work other than this one, why don't you just call it a day? Now, that would be ballsy as all get out, but I don't think Michigan has that ability right now. But I would bet you good money that there are people inside that school, inside the university, athletic department, whatever the case may be, they're kind of hoping and praying that the Chargers throw up a burlap sack with a green dollar sign on it at Jim Harbaugh and say, please come be our guy. I'd bet you good money that there is a faction, at least a sizable faction inside that athletic department that really, truly, you can't say it. You can't say, hey, I hope the guy that just won us the national championship leaves. I hope the guy that took us to where we have not been able to get to since, you could argue, 1997 or more likely 1948, got us to where we wanted to be. I hope he's not our coach next year. You can't say that. Can't do it. But on the inside, you can hope and pray, God, I hope they take him. I beg them to make sure that he doesn't come back here next year, because I'm so sick and tired of everything that comes with Jim Harbaugh. And I hope somebody else makes him their problem. I bet you that feeling exists. There's not a whole lot you can do about it publicly. And I think Jim Harbaugh is going to use that to his advantage. He's either going to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, or he gets to demand whatever contract stipulations he wants. And you've got to sign the contract, because in the court of public opinion, if he says, you know what, I'm stepping down because they won't agree to my demands, nobody will ask what those demands were, how ridiculous they were, how unprecedented they were. Those questions won't come up. The only questions that will come up is, how incompetent are you that you squandered an alumnus from your university who just won you the national championship, and you pushed that guy out the door? Because the AD, president, board of regents will have to answer those questions, and it won't be pretty. So don't be surprised if Jim Harbaugh uses his standing right now to either A, bolt out the door that he has been dying to bolt out of for a couple of years now, or B, stay in a spot that he doesn't want to be in, but damn it, you can make it a really, really, really nice bed to lay in. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching here on YouTube, it's still an ugly, disgusting face, so we'll work on that. Got some medicine, so hey, cool. Give us a subscribe, though. Make sure you're getting all the college football content we're pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. Be back at it tomorrow. Talk college football right here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.